Hello lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If you are returning, then thank you. If you are new here, then I'm Candy and welcome, and happy new year to everybody. Oh my goodness, it's 2022. I cannot believe it. And December and November were weird for me. I felt really emotionally down in November. I felt really unfocused. December, I felt a bit overwhelmed. Although I had a beautiful time with the kids, I didn't feel very well, and I was in and out of bed and off my feet throughout December. And I think those 2 months just made me realise that I'm tired and overwhelmed, and there was a feeling of too muchness across the board, too much going on in my head, too much pushing myself, too many expectations, too many jobs, too many demands, too much stuff around me, just that feeling of too much. In that quiet time between Christmas and New Year, I sat with that feeling of too much, which was funny because I was thinking about plans for the year ahead and goal setting and my word of the year, and do I want to do another depth year? Do I want to do a no buy year or low buy year? Or am I going to drop all of that? I also did a couple of videos, and in those videos I had a moment which I want to talk about. So I was doing a flip through, unfair comparisons flip through of my ride or die decks to Mistress Ray. So within that VR response, there was a moment where I turned two cards over on two of my favourite decks, the Dreams of Gaia and the Osho Zen, and the difference between the two cards in the two different decks just grabbed me and said, this is what you're feeling. It's the difference between these two cards, and I wanted to share it because I am certain, and I know that I'm not the only person feeling like this, that feeling of too much, just too much in all areas of life. There are lots of talk, and I hear people saying depth year, no buy year, like decluttering, just less. There is a call for less in our collective consciousness that I'm seeing. Not for everybody, I know, but I'm hearing a lot of the same thing being said. Now, the two cards were two different versions of the Nine of Wands. This is the Osho Zen version, which talks about exhaustion. It talks about the nature of trying to keep it all going, trying to chase after everything, trying to keep this ridiculous machine of the ego and the way you want to live functioning, and getting so busy and so crammed in with everything that you think you need to do or own or chase after, that you end up completely exhausted of your own doing. I think this is a little bit how I ended 2021. In comparison, the Dreams of Gaia card is this beautiful, simple card, and it caught my attention because I'd said to a few friends, I just want to spend a month with a stone, exploring it, like this one that I dug up in the woods. I just want to spend then another month with a flower, exploring it. That's how big the call was to not being stuck in that feeling of too much. And this card talks about going through life with ease. The guidebook says something beautiful. It says going through life with ease doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that you're not making it more complicated than it needs to be. That struck a chord. So my word of the year changed. I wasn't even going to talk about my word of the year, but we're doing it now. I was going to pick the word consistent because I've got a whole list of goals, and I thought the only way you're going to achieve them if you're consistent, you do things every week. And I'd mapped it all out, and I put a big cross through that word consistent. I went to my Earthbound Oracle, which is a really simple deck that I've been using because it's more simple. and I pulled this card, Protect. But I just loved the fact that it had a black feather, which immediately reminded me of the Morrigan coming in, opening up this old padlock that obviously has been left abandoned. Opening the lock, this for me is about the protection of the Morrigan and stepping into the freedom of knowing that you're protected. You've got your own back. You're not pushing yourself into exhaustion. So although the key word on this is protect, I felt like the message was you're protected enough now with your own boundaries and with the Morrigan to actually step into freedom. So freedom from too much. I loved that idea of freedom. So I started journaling on, well, what would freedom look like to feel better and to get away from this feeling of exhaustion? And for me, I ended up in the area of slow living, of slowing everything down, taking those demands off myself, simplifying life, simplifying my environment, simplifying the jobs that are being asked of me every day, and actually really looking after myself, because this feeling put me in bed really poorly for most of December, and I still don't feel quite right now. I think you could possibly still hear it in my voice, that there is still that exhaustion there. And to get back to this ease, so my word of the year turned into a phrase. It turned into slow living freedom, which I put up on my Instagram with a photograph that I took when I was walking through the wild landscape of Wales on a day that just filled my soul with joy. It was just me and the dogs in complete solitude in the middle of nowhere in Wales. And I keep returning to that landscape in my mind, thinking it was the feeling of that day, of that sort of slow living freedom, away from demands and too much and consumerism, and just that sense of freedom. So slow living freedom is the space I'm stepping into. What is that going to look like on my channel? It's going to look like less books shared, because instead of 50 books, I've set myself the target of reading 12. So I can really sit with a book and soak it in and make notes on it and journal about it, without racing to get a book a week finished and panicking about being behind with my reading schedule. It's about spending longer with decks. Now, I spent a good month and a half studying this deck last year, and I'm still not finished. I want to stick with it. The Osho Zen as well, I spent months studying that, and I'm still not ready to move on. So there might be it might be a slower share of decks as well. It might be that there are simpler decks being used. I got gifted by my gorgeous friend Jen the Earthbound Oracle and the Wooden Tarot. She said, I just think you'll love them, and she's so right. These are quite simple images, and I'm just loving using that. So I'm not going to rush anything, any sharing. I think, if I'm totally honest, the collection videos that I was sharing at the end of the year kind of sparked all of this. I felt overwhelmed by my own collection, sharing them. That's why there's 3 videos left that I haven't even uploaded. And it just made me step back and look at everything. So there'll be possibly a slower sharing of decks, and normally I would put pressure on myself to not do that, but there's no pressure now at all. That week when the kids were away between Christmas and New Year, all I did was I started decluttering. There's no way I'm ever going to be a minimal person. in the house because I have all my art supplies and I love things around me. But there are going to be areas in the house now that I want to become more minimal. I'm going to share a story about starting in my kitchen, decluttering some of the cupboards in my kitchen and giving it a deep clean. And I've wondered whether to share this or not because I was horrified for a while, but it is such an important lesson for me that I did want to share it. I started one side of the kitchen first and I decluttered cookbooks, and I left some cookbooks on the shelf and thought if they're not used within a year, I will declutter them. Part of the slow living is reducing waste and learning to cook and reducing my consumption of food and getting fit again. So I went through all my cookbooks and I got left out my vegan and vegetarian cookbooks and the paleo cookbooks. So the kitchen seemed a good place to start decluttering. I started pulling out cupboards and taking things to the charity shop. And then I started on the other side of the kitchen with the under sink cupboard where I keep all of my cleaning utensils. I also keep my paper making blender in there as well for blending papers down. And I pulled it all out, and after I'd pulled it all out, I realised that a mouse had been living in there. All of my kitchen cupboards are fully enclosed apart from that one under the kitchen sink because of the pipes needing to go out of the wall for the dishwasher and the washing machine and the sink. So that's open at the back. And in the summer, a mouse had, I think, had run in from the garden and had got under the kickboard. And I'd spotted it a couple of times in the kitchen and was completely horrified that there was a mouse inside the house. So I got my humane mouse trap, which I sometimes have to use in my greenhouse if I get mice getting in there stealing seeds. And I put it out, and within a night we'd caught him and we took him to the woods and we released him, and he was fine. And I've never seen any other mouse activity since in the house. That was in the summer. So it just goes to show how I don't know what I've got in my cupboards, because when I pulled out all the cleaning products from the cleaning cupboards, the irony of it is all my cleaning products had a mouse nest around them. All of my cleaning cloths at the back of the cupboard that were extra had all been torn apart and turned into a nest. The cupboard was full of mouse droppings and I didn't even know. For me, that was a horrific wake-up call to the fact that I don't know what's in my cupboards. I'm not even using them. If a mouse could have lived in there and I didn't realise for 6 months, doesn't that go to show that everything in that cupboard I don't need? So I went from wondering whether it would be worth it to declutter to having extreme clarification that every single cupboard in my house needs to be opened, the stuff needs to be got out and cleaned, and most of it needs to be got rid of. In that week between Christmas Eve and New Year, I took 2 carfuls of stuff to the charity shop. So you've seen the kitchen being decluttered. It's not finished yet, so I am going to be doing a final kitchen decluttering, and you are going to get decluttering and slow living videos on this channel as well. I also started in my spare bedroom, which is tiny, which we call the wardrobe room, because it's got all my wardrobes in, a big double wardrobe and clothes rails. Me and Busby share that for clothes. It's also the dumping room. It's also where all the Christmas decoration boxes were out. You literally couldn't get in there, and all the Christmas decoration stuff was spilling out onto the landing. So if we wanted clothes, we had to climb in and climb out. The mouse made me look at that situation upstairs and realise that not only is that just messy for Christmas, but you are borderline hoarder there. And I don't say that lightly, just throwing the word hoarder around, because I know it's a diagnosable affliction that affects people. But that's where I was at, and it just, the mouse opened my eyes to the fact that there is an issue in the house. So I've also started decluttering my clothes, which is all tied in with weight gain and enough wardrobes for like 20 different sizes. And so it's been a busy old time. So for my channel, it will mean that there will be things like that on the channel. There's still going to be tarot. I'm also going into a no-buy year. This all links, and I'm going to do a separate video about what happened in depth year. And I've had somebody send me some questions they want me to answer about that. So that is a video that's coming, and I've had requests for what am I doing with my journals. That's another video that's coming. But I just wanted to share my mouse story and the wake-up call that a mouse gave me, and the wake-up call that flipping through these two decks and seeing these two cards together gave me. It's pushed me into slow living freedom. It's pushed me into a no-buy year. It's pushed me into a declutter of the whole house and a push towards minimal living spaces within the house as well. It's pushed me towards reducing waste and getting back to the way I used to cook. It's pushed me into getting back to health, and yeah, the wardrobe is going to be quite a video in its own right. So so that's it, guys. That's how a mouse impacted my new year and pushed me towards slow living freedom, away from exhaustion. So if that resonated with anybody, let me know. If you're thinking of calming your overwhelm and stepping away from too much and being kinder on yourself for this coming year, and no buy and decluttering and slowing down and savouring life rather than charging at life, then let me know if you're feeling it too. I am hearing this being said more than I'm not at the moment. So I do think there's a collective consciousness where we are kind of feeling the same feelings as each other. I am sharing this with trepidation because, well, this and just the wake-up call and the horror and the need to step into a quieter space. So do let me know. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I'm so excited to get to some journaling videos and to share my tarot decks and any studying and the books that I am going to savour and write notes on and share. Hopefully this space will feel like a place to exhale, still full of wondrous things, but also a sense of calm. Thank you so much for listening to a very rambly first video of 2022. So thanks so much, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.